Hello again, everybody. I'm Roger Hoover. Glad to welcome you back to the Crimson Tide Sports Network and welcome to this Thursday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by TuscaloosaToyota.com. Check them out online at TuscaloosaToyota.com. Roll Tide. Hope everything's going well as we close out the month of June and we have our last Crimson Drive show of not only the month, but we'll be taking a couple weeks off for our summer vacation before we're back in mid-July with SEC Media Days. Let's go ahead and take a look at today's headlines, and they are presented to us by RJ Young, who's furnished us with this smartboard. RJ Young is the official technology solutions provider of Crimson Drive. First of all, on the show today, we have two interviews, two great guests, starting with the head coach of the Alabama men's basketball team, Nate Oats, as we take a look back at last year, talk about what the Crimson Tide are up to this summer as practice has already started here in Tuscaloosa, and we also talk about the NBA draft. Then we'll be joined by our friend Tim Brando of Fox Sports as he breaks down everything going on in a very changing college football landscape, plus some thoughts on Alabama from Timmy B as well. Speaking of Crimson Tide football, 3 players earlier this week were named to the 2022 Walter Camp preseason All-America team, including quarterback Bryce Young, along with Will Anderson Jr. at linebacker, then defensive back Eli Ricks, who hasn't played yet for the Crimson Tide, just transferred over from LSU, but is part of that recognition. And for Alabama, 3 players among the 50 that received that honor. And over the next couple weeks, you're going to be seeing more and more preseason, not only All-America lists, but best of list or trophy watch list. You're going to see a lot of Alabama players on those lists, so make sure you head to rolltide.com for the latest. Taking a look at Crimson Tide men's basketball, we'll be talking in just a few moments with the head coach of the Tide, Nate Oats. It was announced earlier in the week some home and road matchups that Alabama will have in SEC basketball. So we don't know exactly when these games will be just yet, but we do know that some of the notable home games inside Coleman Coliseum will be against Auburn and also against Arkansas, who had a great run last year in the NCAA tournament. And then it's always a huge crowd when Kentucky comes to town. So part of the highlights for Alabama basketball at home coming up this year. Last week, we were getting ready for the NBA draft, and we saw late in the second round, J.D. Davison was selected number 53 overall by the Boston Celtics, a team that won the Eastern Conference last year. He is now headed to Boston as part of the NBA draft. Also, some two-way contracts signed by Keon Ellis, Jaden Shackelford. We'll hear more about that with Coach Oates coming up in a minute. And also, we'll hear about the great success Alabama's having the last 3 years for Nate Oates. 4 players selected in the NBA draft. Certainly a sign of great things to come for this program, continuing to get more and more NBA talent here in Tuscaloosa. Final few notes for today. We look at gymnastics. Ashley Johnston, the head coach who we visited with a few weeks ago here on Crimson Drive, she announced that Justin Spring has been hired as assistant coach. He's not only an NCAA champion, and extensive experience as well in the Olympics with Team USA, so welcome Justin Spring to campus. Track and field, the World Championships will have 5 alums representing not only Alabama, but also on Team USA in the upcoming World Championships. Swimming, we've seen Ryan White really represent Alabama well as Sheeran bronze in the 200 backstroke at the World Championships in swimming. And also coming up, if you want to watch some Crimson Tide sports, why don't you head over to the SEC Network on Saturday. It's time for a takeover of the SEC Network, as you'll see some great football games, men's basketball, softball, women's basketball coming up on the SEC Network. Full roster and schedule coming up for the SEC Network takeover is available on rolltide.com. Right now, taking over this edition of Crimson Drive is the head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide men's basketball team, Nate Oats, as we talk about not only the past year for Alabama, but mostly focus on some of the newcomers to this Crimson Tide team. I think you'll enjoy this conversation with the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nate Oats.
First of all, Coach, roll tide. How's the summer going for you?
Going all right. Guys have had a good month of workouts so far. We've gotten out to see some recruits, high school events, and it's been busy, real busy. Summer school's going, but I think it's been good. We're going to give our guys a little bit of time off around the 4th, the end of summer 1 before we get going summer 2. We just didn't want to burn them out with the foreign tour coming up in August. So, but it's been a good first month.
How much of the workouts, as you mentioned with the players, are focused on kind of fundamentals, some basketball 101, and how much are you starting to work in your offense and defensive principles into those workouts?
With the foreign tour and having to play games, we're doing more 5-on-5, working in our team concepts more than maybe we usually would, but we're definitely still doing some individual skill. I mean, the summer's for player development, getting better, but the player development can be within the, context of the team. So I think we're trying to do a little both, but more 5-on-5 than maybe we normally would do. But I like it. It's been good. We've got a lot of new guys, and they need to get comfortable in the system. Foreign tour is going to give us 3 really good games, and winning and losing those games isn't the biggest thing, but we would like to be prepared to play games come foreign tour time.
Well, that's certainly exciting coming up later on this summer. Let's take a look back for just a moment at this past season for the Crimson Tide, kind of years down the road, maybe. What do you think you'll remember most about the season Alabama just had?
It was a fun year. I mean, if it hadn't followed up the year before, everybody'd be super excited about it. You follow up winning the SEC regular season tournament, being a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament, finishing 5th in the polls, like expectations got raised a little bit. So, some people may have been a little disappointed, but I'm going to try to remember the good stuff. We beat Gonzaga in the state of Washington. Nobody else in the country did that last year. We beat Houston at home in a big time game. J.D. Davidson played great as a freshman for us, particularly at the end of the game. We beat Baylor at home in the Big 12 Challenge. Those were 3 Final Four teams from the year before, and we swept them. We had the number 1 strength of schedule non-conference and had some big wins in the non-conference. Think about Miami. We beat Miami by 32. They go on and beat Carolina by 30, losing the national championship game. I mean, we had some really good wins. We had some losses we shouldn't have had either. So we got to get some more consistency about us moving forward, but we had some wins that everybody was excited about. As good a wins as anybody in the country had last year. We had. So it was a good season overall. We got stuff to get better at, and we're going to get better at it this summer. We're working on it, trying to change a few things in the culture and get better at some of the basketball stuff we need to get better at. But it was a good overall season for us.
That was year 3 of the Nate Oats era. Now we're getting ready for year 4. And for you, Coach, you've had some real continuity with your assistant coaches, Charlie Henry, Brian Hodgson, and Swan Petway. Just how key has that been to the success of this program? And it's also getting pretty rare because, a lot of times you see a head coach take over to Power 5 school. There can be some changing assistants within the first couple of years, but that hasn't happened at Alabama.
Yeah, no, I like our assistants a lot. I think Petway is just an unbelievable human being. He's great for the program. He lives and breathes Alabama basketball, and you can tell, and he's got no ego. So keeping him was one of the best things I did when I got here. Brian and myself have history. He's been with me every year. I've been a head coach in Division I. He's done a great job recruiting here. And Charlie, I knew him right when he got out of college. I gave him his first job right out of college. So got a long history with him. I think he's really smart and he works really hard. He's added a lot of value. So, I wasn't just hiring just random people off the street that had a good resume. I've got a relationship with Brian and Charlie before I got here, and I built a really good relationship with Petway, and he's got a really strong relationship with Alabama basketball. And so I've been fortunate that we've got a great administration that's allowed me to, reward these guys for the years that we've had and keep them here, and that they understand the value of having continuity in the staff. I think it helps with recruiting. It helps with your culture in the program. And I'd love to work with the same 3 assistants, for a long time. Now, I also want them to all go get head jobs at that time too. So if they leave, I'd like for them to leave for a head job and, moving up. I don't want to see people leave for other programs. Just, I think it speaks to how we're running the program here too. And you look at coaches that have been in similar spots for similar number of years, and they've had a lot of turnover in a lot of different places, and their coaches aren't leaving for head jobs. So that maybe, we try to run things here where people want to be here, and they're obviously winning helps too. So, but yeah, I think it's big for the program.
There is one new face that's on campus among your support staff, a new strength and conditioning coach, and Henry Barrera. What have you seen from him? Because this time of the year is really important in the weight room.
No, it's real important. I mean, this is when you change your body over in the off season. Henry's great. He's a basketball guy. He's into, the movement, how they move, can they use the strength that they're adding? Can we turn them into better basketball players, not bodybuilders, weightlifters, any of that. And I think I like his energy. I like he's on top of his stuff. He's cutting edge with everything he's doing. He also adds a lot to the culture. I think he really cares about the guys. So, we were sad to see Snowden leave, and we had a great run with Mike, and our time at Buffalo and here, and, he made a family decision. So, but it gave us an opportunity to add, Henry to the mix. And I'm glad I was able to do it because I thought he was going to be really good coming in. He's been better than I thought he was going to be. So our players are all benefiting from him being here, and he's added a lot to the staff as well.
It's getting to work with some talented returning players from last year's team, also some newcomers. If we could, I'd love to go through just some of the new faces that are on campus. Let's start with Brandon Miller. What have you seen from him?
Brandon Miller's really talented, smooth, got length, athleticism, great body control, can really shoot it, high basketball IQ. I mean, he's highly rated kid, and deservedly so. He's a guy that I feel like is going to be in the NBA for a long time. He's the type of player they're looking for, with that size and skill level. He's been a great kid. I mean, he's all about Alabama. He's worked hard. He's endeared himself to his teammates, but he's definitely established himself as one of the better players on this team and more talented kids that we've had come through this program.
How about Mark Sears?
Mark's been really good. I mean, I knew he could score it well at Ohio. He's been a lot better point guard than what I thought maybe he was going to be coming in. He's gotten really good at making the reads. He's an Alabama kid that's really all about Alabama basketball, and you can tell, I mean, he wants us to be good. He's eager to learn. And he's been making shots. I mean, he shot 42% at Ohio from three. We needed shooting. So, Quinterly and Jaden Bradley have not been able to practice yet. So he's been getting tons of reps at the point. We're going to be able to play him on the ball and off the ball both with how well he shoots it. But I think it's been good for his development to have to play the point every day in practice with those two out. And he's gotten really good. I mean, he's learning our offense quickly. And I like the kid a lot. He's strong, tough, shows some tenacity on defense too. So he's going to add a lot to our program.
Dom Welch.
Dom's given us exactly what we said we needed when we signed him. Shooting with size, with experience. He knows how to get his shot off. He knows how to get open. He knows how to play. He's got a high IQ on the defensive end. He's got size and toughness, and he's strong, and he's been making shots. He's exactly what we needed him to be.
Then we'll finish with these two, Nick Pringle and Noah Clowney.
So Nick is finishing up a class he had to finish up to get here. He has not been here yet. I do think he's working out hard at home. We've watched videos, stayed in touch with him. I like him as a person a lot, but we haven't had the chance to coach him here yet. Clowney's been really good, like better than what I even thought, more athletic than what I thought. And he's just plays super hard. He doesn't move as much like a guard as Herb does, but he's going to be able to impact the game on the defensive end in a lot of ways like Herb did, like block shots, get hands on balls for steals, react to plays quickly to get over to block the shot, cover for his teammates well. And then he's making shots in practice too. He can make a three as a 6'10" kid. So we're super happy with him.
Rylan Griffin.
He's making shots. He had a day in practice. He went 5 of 6 from 3 on live stuff. So, he's learning the game. He needs to learn how to play defense better, but he's a sponge. He wants to get better. He's working hard, and he's athletic and can make shots. And that's our shooting needed a lot of help last year. And between Sears and Namari, which I'll get to coming back, and Dom Welch and Rylan, like we're gonna be a better shooting team where we've got more efficient shooters, and that's what we need to do. And Rylan's going to be a big part of that. So Namari had a day he went 7 of 8 from 3. So Rylan had a day he went 5 of 6. Now, you can't do that every day, but if we can get some consistency out of, some of those guys on shooting, we're going to be a lot better.
Then what does the summer look like for Namari Burnett? How is he continuing to recover?
Namari's been good. He's played everything 1, 2, 3 for us. He's been shooting the ball pretty well. His recovery's coming along great. I know we've got a great training staff. Clark's done a good job with him. He looks good. He's athletic, but he still hasn't been able to do every drill like through the entire practice. They're just trying to limit his reps. But I think when we get back from that kind of break over the 4th of July, we give him, and he comes back and we start really getting ready for the foreign trip. I think he'll be able to be in almost everything and be able to play in the games in the foreign tour. And he's been good. I mean, if we would have had him last year, we would have won some more games. And he's showing us that again. He showed us that before he got hurt last year. He's showing that again, and he's going to be a big part of what we do this year.
Well, looking forward, last week was big for the Crimson Tide, seeing J.D. Davison drafted by the Celtics. Just what does it mean for you to have 4 players drafted the first 3 years you've been at Alabama? What does that mean for this program?
I think it's big. I mean, use it in recruiting. You want to recruit the best possible players you can recruit. Well, they want to play in the NBA at this level. So you've got to have a track record of putting guys in the NBA. I think I saw a stat, Fox Sports put out a tweet that they had most lottery picks in the last 5 years. Well, Alabama was tied with Gonzaga for 4th. I think it was Duke, Kentucky, and Florida State were the only teams that had more than us. You know, when you got Colin Sexton was here before we got here, but he's in the last 5 years. So Colin and then Kyra Lewis and Primo. Well, then with us, you know, Kyra was a lottery pick. Then Primo and Herb both going to draft last year and start as rookies. You know, Herb had as good a year as any rookie in the NBA, I felt like. And then, you know, you add in J.D. Davidson, so four draft picks. I think J.D.'s got a lot of upside. I think he's one of those guys that Boston only had 1 draft pick. They're going to pour everything they've got into him, and hopefully he's really good for them a few years down the road and develops. But Keonell signed a 2-way contract, you know, so hopefully he's playing games in the NBA next year as well, you know, with Sacramento. And Shaq signed at Exhibit 10. So he'll be in training camp with somebody and have a chance to maybe play his way into a 2-way and play some games in the NBA. So we you know, we're putting guys in the NBA. We're running an NBA system. Recruits want to play in the system we play like. They want to see that it's going to translate to making it to the NBA. And I think they're seeing that right now.
Certainly are. Congratulations to those guys. Look forward to their future. Look forward to the future for this Alabama basketball team as well. And Coach, thank you so much for joining us as we're at the end of June. We hope to reconnect with you getting ready for the Europe tour that's coming up later in the summer. But just thank you for your time. Roll Tide.
Thanks, Roger. Appreciate it. Roll Tide.
Thanks to head coach Nate Oats for joining us here on Crimson Drive, driven by Tuscaloosa Toyota. We'll be talking a lot more basketball when this show returns coming up in July to get you ready for that foreign tour that Alabama will be on as they continue getting ready for this upcoming fall schedule. So even though we return in a few weeks, we're going to be talking a lot of football, of course, getting ready for the season that is ahead. Basketball, we'll still try and talk a lot of basketball and hopefully be joined by some of the newcomers that we mentioned with Coach Oats just a few minutes ago. Right now, though, we will turn our attention to the ever-changing world of college football. If you're following the news today, even some news has changed today that may impact even what was said yesterday when Tim Brando joined us as we recorded this interview yesterday. But again, we're talking about the big picture and the changing landscape of college football. Nobody better to break it down than Fox Sports' Tim Brando, as he was able to join us yesterday, talking not only about the changing college football landscape, but also Crimson Tide football. Now let's go down to Louisiana. Let's go to Chateau Brando and check in with our buddy Tim Brando. It's good to see you, Tim. How's everything going?
I'm wonderful, Raj. Just enjoying the sultry days of summer like you. And I'm trying to push the calendar back so I can get an extra, a few rounds of golf in before toe meets leather. But it's getting here. It really is.
Certainly is. And certainly in college football, we continue to see things change. The landscape is changing each and every day, it seems like. And I'll start here. We've talked about this in the last couple of years around this time of the year, the need for somebody to lead college football, whether it's commissioner, azar, whatever you want to call it. You've been talking about that for a while. Do you feel it even more?
20 years.
Do you feel it even more with what we've seen in the last few months?
Yeah. I mean, without a doubt. And it's funny because there's some that used to scoff at the notion of that becoming a reality are now praying for it to happen, and I get that. I think because maybe to some extent the business model of the sport has changed so dramatically in just a few short months. Those that used to think Brando was off his rocker talking about such things are now beginning to understand that, there were other things at work here that were going to put us in a situation where we really did need universal leadership in Division I college football. And even my staunchest critics have come around to saying, gosh, Brando, I had no idea that it was going to get like this the way it did. And we really do need, a czar, a commissioner, somebody to take control. And that, Roger, is the problem, I think, because all those that were in a position of power didn't do anything with it, notably the NCAA. Mark Emmert kicked the can down the street for 15 years on name, image, and likeness. They knew this was coming. They knew what the ruling was last July, a year ago at this time, a 9-0 vote with Justice Roberts just condemning the NCAA, not no, but hell no to what they were offering. And they still didn't do anything. And so now we understand that the commissioners of the conferences, and all 10 of them, okay, all 10, not just the Power Five, but all 10, have got to get together now and come up with a plan, not only to get some universal leadership, but to also regulate, what is a situation with NIL and the transfer portal that has given us unrestricted free agency with no salary cap. I mean, that's where we are. And the notion that it's too late is wrong. It is not too late to regulate. It's not. We just need a few things to happen with the calendar first. Midterm elections coming up in November are huge. If one particular party gets control of both the House and the Senate, and I'm not going to get overly political with you, but let's just say if you were to guess which particular party cared more about college athletics, which would you pencil in? I think you know the answer to that. Once that happens, I think the commissioners can all go up to the Capitol in DC and find a way to regulate what's going on with NIL. And by the time all this happens, we'll be at the end of the year, end of the calendar year. So starting the following year, okay, in January of 23, we could have some regulations that could be put in place that everyone, regardless of what the state laws might be, would have to adhere to. And the television contract for the Big Ten, which as of this taping has not been formally announced, but will be worth $1 billion, with my company, the company I work for, Fox, already secure in having its piece, is now putting together the other rights holders. And I think when people start seeing that kind of money that's there, what's available to them, in addition to all the conversation that's going on about who gets what and competitive advantage and competitive disadvantage, I think it's going to be realistic to think we might get a situation where the schools and the players themselves might be able to get a piece of that television pie, because the money is just so through the roof, particularly for the Big Ten and for the SEC, that a percentage of that could very easily go to the players, which could help even things out, with regard to name, image, and likeness. So I think all of that is on the table between now and the end of the year.
Speaking of those television revenues separating the Big Ten, the SEC, how do the other leagues try and stay competitive? What does that look like over a decades-long process when they're consistently getting millions of dollars less than these SEC or Big Ten schools?
Well, I think we've just seen the Big 12 yesterday announce their new commissioner, Mr. Yarmort, who comes from Jay-Z's Rock Nation and NASCAR. So he's got a pretty incredible resume if you read it. There's a lot there. There's a lot to consume. George Kliavkoff came from Vegas and MGM Grand. And I think that Kliavkoff has been welcomed. I think he's been a breath of fresh air to some extent. I know that Commissioner Sankey and he together went up to the Capitol just a few months ago to get their kind of read on, what could happen, what could they do as it relates to NIL. And to some extent, that's where, some of my sources on what could happen after the midterms, that's where that comes from. A lot of that comes from information gleaned from those conversations that filtered through channels. And I think that probably played a role in another outside the box, if you want to call it that, hire by the Big 12, because the future of college athletics now, with amateurism being redefined, is one where you got to be thinking outside the box if you're any school, about where do we go, how do we manifest. We've got more money than we've ever had, but how do we channel it in the right direction? How do we take advantage of it? And how do we secure more of it? Okay, these guys have been not dealing with athletic directors and coaches. They've been dealing with television networks and digital sites, for their jobs, whether it be in entertainment with Jay-Z for the Big 12 commissioner, or if you're in the gaming industry, as Kliavkov has been. So that's where the money's going to be. We'll see if in the Big Ten deal, Amazon is included. There's some thoughts. There have been some published reports that Amazon could be included in the Big Ten deal to go along with the network affiliations it has. Apple is showing greater interest. I mean, all the digital companies now are getting involved, and that is a new revenue stream, to deal with. And maybe these guys bring an insight into those areas that can be deemed helpful. The first outside the box hire among commissioners, people forget this, but Mike Oresco, when he was hired by the American Conference, at the time it was the Big East. And the Big East was getting out of the football business, and they were separating and starting their own league. And the Catholic schools were going to start their own conference, only basketball. And he had to, with his law degree, work out all kinds of naming circumstances, rights to play the Big East tournament with the Big East moniker in the Garden in New York. That came at a price. The Big East schools paid that price. He had to rename the league for those schools that remained and went with the American. He had no background in athletics as it related to being an athletic director or an associate commissioner. He didn't come up the way of a Mike Slive or a Greg Sankey. He was in the television business, but it really helped him and helped the schools in that league. Among the non-Power 5 conferences, no one's got a better TV deal than the American Conference. And that's one of the reasons, even though it's a light years away from what Power 5s get, he did negotiate $1 billion deal for all the schools in his league to be divided equally from all the schools. And now they just got more money from the schools exiting to go to the Big 12. $18 million per team was given to the conference. So that helps them with the losses of Cincinnati and Houston and so on. So it'll be very interesting to see. That was considered really outside the box when Mike was hired. He had been a vice president of college programming at ESPN when I was there, at CBS when I was there. And it worked out beautifully for them. So these two guys, the most recent ones in the Pac-12 and Big 12, are even further outside the realm. Mike at least knew the people. He was just on the other side. He was on the TV side talking about money, and he was talking about, getting games, dates of games changed, TV times moved, all that. So he had a relationship, but not the same way that most, commissioners have relationships with presidents and athletic directors within the leagues they work for.
Somebody, of course, you have worked with before, that is Archie Manning, who this past weekend, along with his sons and his family, helped host the Manning Passing Academy in Louisiana that Alabama quarterback Bryce Young was a part of. Just from your perspective, how have you seen that academy grow through the years with Archie's leadership, and what kind of weekend was it for Bryce getting to be with some of the best in the nation?
It's a weekend he'll never forget, Roger. I mean, it's unbelievable. I went to the very first one. It was actually in Hammond. They didn't have it in Thibodaux that year. They had it in Hammond, where southeastern Louisiana plays its football. They did not have a program at that time. This is going back, what is this, the 18th? Something like that. It's almost 20 years. And I went down and did a story for the original. I know you watch a show on SEC Network called Football Saturdays. That's the title of a show that originally was a show I did and won all those Emmys you see over my shoulder. with Raycom Sports. And we did a piece on the academy itself, went down there and talked to Archie and saw and met with a lot of the people that were invited to the very first one. And it was incredible. And, I remember Archie saying with, at that time, with Peyton and Eli, both active, very active. And Eli was just getting into New York at that time. He said, it's probably, we don't get together as a family at Christmas anymore. It's hard for me and the boys, as he'd like to say it, to get together all at the same time for more than 2 days. And so they love it. It's a family affair for them. And all the quarterbacks that are there just get, to peel back, the onion a little bit on the Manning family as it relates to the dynamics of how they work. And the relationships that they have, that's the other great thing about it is, texts to and from the Mannings to these quarterbacks never stop in the aftermath of it all. They maintain contact. Just as I might maintain contact with you or any other young broadcaster that I've spent time with. It's the same dynamic. Okay. You're kind of you're in the family, so to speak. And so I'm sure Bryce will be talking about it for a long time. When Archie was working with me at CBS, and also when we did Saints games, preseason games together for 6 of the 11 years I did the Saints, that'd be the first thing we talk about. He would come in, who was really, whoever the sleeper was, the guy maybe he knew the least about, and he would say, oh my God, this guy's really good. Peyton really thought this about him. And, it was a talking point, for us. And we utilized it in the studio at CBS at that time. So, yeah, and given the news on Arch, all coming down at about the same time, and Ole Miss winning the national championship in baseball on the same weekend while the Mannings were having the passing academy, it was, I'm sure, a cool time for all of them.
Once you go on this, we know we're probably still a little bit away from your preseason top 10. Of course, it's still
yes,
a month
we
away.
are. Thank you. Thank you for giving me a mulligan. I will have to come back, when all the precincts are reporting and give you the goods. But go ahead.
We'll give you a call, certainly. But again, a month away from football camp starting, but what's coming back for this Crimson Tide team. They've been able to add in the transfer portal another good recruiting class. Just what's your feeling about this group led by Bryce Young and Will Anderson as they get ready for this season, try to get back to a national championship game and win it?
Well, they are the odds-on pick, to win the league and to win the national championship. I don't think there's any question about that. But again, as I usually am this time of year, I'm always looking for those other storylines that might be out there and trying to see who might be better than people think, and who might have a schedule that could be beneficial to keep them maybe in it. But look, Alabama overachieved a year ago, and I dare say they, based on who they have coming back, could potentially underachieve and still be in the national championship game. Okay. Because of the system. Okay. They're always at an advantage with the system we have with only 4 teams getting in. We don't need to go down that road again. It's going to be a while. We know when it's going to happen, and it will happen, but not until the 26th season. But I don't think that anyone would suggest that anybody else in the West could knock them off. It's about who could finish second there. As it relates to Georgia and the teams in the East that would be competing, that's a little bit different. That's another conversation. Because we know, even though Georgia lost a ton of that talent, they returned the mission critical position. Okay. When you've got a guy that's won it all and he's back at quarterback, plus you're replacing a lot of studs with additional studs. Kirby his program is officially Alabama light, which became Alabama heavy in the national championship game most recently. So, they're a different story. Okay. The A&M thing on October the 8th is going to be quite special, and it'll be a talking point for a long time during the course of this season because of what happened. And I will tell you the I'm going to tell you right now that the winner in that whole deal is LSU, because LSU coming off a 6-7 season with a new coach and with a talent pool at quarterback, the likes of which they haven't seen in years. Okay, they got 3 guys that can really play, and the Arizona State transfer is a stud. I saw him several times in the Pac-12. Saw him go up to Michigan State, ironically, and beat Michigan State as a freshman. So, and he was not fully equipped the way he is now. He's throwing the ball now much better than he did back then. He was a run first guy then, and he'd probably be considered more of a run first guy now. But his passing and leadership skills are much better. I do think LSU could win as many as 10 games. I do. I think they have the capability to win 10, probably 9, more accurate. But A&M, Alabama, the whole dynamic between A&M and Alabama actually helps LSU from my perspective, just looking at it from the position I do and geographically where I do. And as usual, and this has been the case for a long time with them, with LSU, they're the team most people don't know as much about. It's kind of like, well, they could go here, or they could go there, or they might only win 7, but God, they could win 10. They almost historically, going back to the Les Miles period through the Orgeron era, and now in the first year of Brian Kelly, they carry that moniker. He is clearly taking control of the program and is doing some things within it that hasn't been done in years. Wasn't done really by Les Miles or by Orgeron. Leadership councils, all the things that separated Nick and to some extent Kirby. Those things are now going on in Baton Rouge. They were sorely needed, and I gushed over the hire. I thought it was a great hire, and I'm seeing things down there that make me believe that I was accurate in feeling that way. So I think they may be the surprise team, because everyone's just believing based on recruiting alone and who's returning that A&M, if anyone, can challenge Alabama. I really don't think any of them can challenge Alabama, but I think LSU could have potentially a better year than A&M. How about that? I'll just, I believe that potential is there. And when I come out with my top 10, I'll give you one hint. My fly in the ointment. I will give you my fly in the ointment today. You want to hear it?
Let's go.
Houston, the Cougars. All right. They have a tougher schedule. They play at Texas Tech early, and Texas Tech's got a new coach, strong coordinator, came up, high school football legends just come in there. People think that Texas Tech may be a surprise team in the Big. That Houston plays at Texas Tech in September, and could send a strong message about where they are and how that guy. It took a while to get his team going, but now I'm telling you that's going to be the Cincinnati story of this year. I don't know that they can go all the way through undefeated, probably not, but if you're looking for a team outside the Power 5 that's going to make a strong run at going undefeated, potentially, I think it's the Cougars of the University of Houston.
We look forward to that top 10. We'll keep hitting refresh on the Tim Brando Twitter feed, and we look forward to that as we get closer and closer to the year. Well, Tim, thank you so much for your time. We always enjoy catching up. We'll do this again very soon. But again, thank you for your time, and enjoy the 4th of July holiday coming up.
You too, Raj. All the best. Give my best to Chris and Eli and all the gang down there in the Capstone.
So much fun with Tim Brando as we talked all things college football. And again, we recorded that interview yesterday. Even today, things are changing around college football. So we'll still have a lot to catch up on when this show returns. And it will be coming back in July on Thursday, July 21st. We'll be back live at 2 p.m. as we'll have a show where we have a lot of interviews from SEC Media Days. Alabama's Day at SEC Media Days this year in Atlanta will be coming up on July 19th. So we'll record some interviews that day from Atlanta. Atlanta and get you ready for the Crimson Tide football season, which is fast approaching. But do want to remind you again, over the next 2 weeks, we will not have the show, but we will be back coming up on July 21st after a brief summer vacation. But we certainly want to thank you for watching. Thanks to Tuscaloosa Toyota for presenting this show. You can go online to TuscaloosaToyota.com to check it out. Big thanks to our producer, Ethan Carabin, for putting it together, as well as our guest, Tim Brando of Fox Sports, and the head coach of the Crimson Tide men's basketball team, Nate Oats. For everyone with the Crimson Tide Sports Network, this is Roger Hoover saying thank you for watching. Roll Tide, enjoy your holiday weekend. We'll see you in a few weeks back here on Crimson Drive.